I'm going to introduce the author starting over on the far side with Don Lattin. Don is the author of 4 books, including the national bestseller, The Harvard Psychedelic Club, How Timothy Leary, Andrew Weil, Ram Dass, and Houston Smith Killed the 50s and Ushered in a New Age for America, which won a 2010 California Book Award for nonfiction. A New York Times reviewer said of the Harvard Psychedelic Club, "This groovy stuff unfurls, chronicling the lives of men who are brilliant but damaged, soulful but vengeful, zonked out but optimistic and wry, like a ready-made treatment for a sprawling, elegiac, and crisply comic movie. Let's say Robert Altman by way of Wes Anderson." It's a really fun read. And then Tony, to his right is Tony DuShane, author of and Friends, author of Confessions of a Teenage Jesus Jerk, a dark coming-of-age comedy about growing up in the world of the Jehovah's Witnesses. He hosts the radio show Drinks with Tony. What I read online is that he hosted along with Tony, which I found quite interesting. And in its review of Confessions of a Teenage Jesus Jerk, Publishers Weekly said, DuShane writes with an insider's perspective about this unique world, balancing criticism with understanding in a convincing portrait of the struggle to integrate religion into a modern world, producing an ultimately touching story that will speak to atheists and believers alike. Then next is Anna Broadway, immediately to Tony's right, and she is the author of Sexless in the City, a memoir of reluctant chastity. She has contributed to sites and publications including Pace and BeliefNet, and regularly writes her Menutics, a Christianity Today blog. For those of you who don't know Christianity Today, it is probably the premier Christian magazine in the country. Publishers Weekly says that Sexless in the City is a candid faith journey, and that Broadway's engaging voice and wit will appeal to a wide readership. And last but not least, Julian Guthrie and her background, because she's a local hero, is an award-winning, everybody here is a local hero, is an award-winning journalist with the San Francisco Chronicle, who has been nominated multiple times for a Pulitzer Prize. Her nonfiction book, The Grace of Everyday Saints, is the story of a small group of believers fighting to save their San Francisco parish from being closed by the hierarchy of the Catholic Church. Kirkus Reviews said The Grace of Everyday Saints is a dramatic David versus Goliath account of a church under siege by its own power structure. Through myriad twists and turns, Guthrie's smoothly written narrative uncovers powerful church secrets and a pillar of community faith. Engaging proof that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. So welcome everybody. And today we thought we were going to talk, obviously each book is covering a different area. I mean, it's pretty wide ranging up here. But there's a couple of elements, and there's a good deal of humor, I think, in each of these authors. They offer a sense of taking a look, and maybe a slightly angled look at religion. And also, obviously, it's a question of religion in the modern world, to put it mildly. Everybody's trying to wrestle with that question, or observing that question and commenting on it. So I wanted to start out with the question that Litquake basically threw out to the 4 of you, which is, how important is faith as a guiding compass in people's lives? You can answer that on a personal level, you can answer that on a sociological level, or you can speak with someone else. But how important is faith as a guiding compass in life?
Well, from my experience, spending the last 6 years with these, what I call very heroic Catholics, faith was something that kept them going. When they were knocked down time and again, faith was what helped them get up again. And when they were losing their faith in the institutional church, they were finding their own kind of privatized faith. And the faith gave them this great strength. So from what I witnessed, it gave resilience, it gave strength, it gave joy, and it gave great hope.
So faith definitely thumbs up for faith.
Thumbs up, yeah, thumbs up from my experience.
But I don't mean I'd be facetious, but in a sense, it was all positive. You saw was there any downside to this strong faith?
No, in this case there wasn't. I mean, faith, I think, Oscar Wilde said skepticism is the beginning of faith. and they were questioning their faith, many for the first time, and they found their faith strengthened once, in this case, they were locked outside of their church. And I saw no downside at all to the faith, but that's an interesting question. Yeah.
Anybody else want to grab that one?
Well, I'll grab it. I worked as the religion reporter for the San Francisco Examiner and the Chronicle for 25 years, so I've been interviewing people of faith for many years. And of course, it's very important in people's lives. But one of the things that I noticed, especially around here in the Bay Area, but also I think across the country, is every year more and more people would tell me that they are, quote, it's almost a cliche now, spiritual but not religious. And every year I hear that more and more and more. And I think people have different meanings when they have different ideas when they say that. But I think one of the things people are talking about when they say they're spiritual but not religious, it's still a faith, but it's a more personal faith. And it's a faith. It's a quest for personal spiritual experience. People, I think, especially younger people, are more, the baby boom generation and younger. You look at survey data and you can see this. People are more interested in the experience of religion rather than doctrine and dogma and denominationalism and all that. And it's interesting because if you read the newspapers, you see, you think the rising religious fundamentalism and intolerance, both the religious right here and the Islamist revolution all around the world. But actually, the opposite is happening. There's actually rising religious tolerance. And a lot of that is people are not trying to impose their own doctrine and beliefs on others as much. There's one statistic I found really interesting. It was a survey, I think it was a Gallup survey, and they asked people, is there more than one way to heaven? Basically, or is there truth in all religions? And of people who describe themselves as having a religious affiliation, 70% said yes, there was, but 57% of evangelical Christians actually said there's more than one way to heaven, which surprised me. Even people who call themselves evangelicals, those who self-identify, are not exclusivists in their ideas about salvation. So I think, to me, experience is the key. I've written 3 books about spirituality, and they came out in the 60s. One book was called Following Our Bliss, and this one, The Harvard Psychedelic Club. And there are lots of reasons for that. I think actually psychedelic drugs were one reason that many people got interested in spiritual experience, because they had these powerful mystical experiences, and they were trying to understand them. So my last book, The Harvard Psychedelic Club, it's about 4 guys who were having these experiences, and then the impact they had on the culture.
I think faith and religion are 2 absolutely different things, and they shouldn't be synonymous with each other. I mean, not to be too silly about it, but when I wake up, I have faith that I'll have a bowel movement that day. And if I don't, then I really hope that my faith the next day will bring me more fiber into my diet. So it's I also have faith that if there is a God, he or she is not really intervening in any way at all. So I can be totally faithful knowing that I will not be blessed, or other people will not be killed in the name of this deity that human beings have to put together in their own story.
All right, so distinction, yes?
Well, I think another way to put what you were kind of talking about, it was interesting when I was getting my second degree in religious studies in the early part of this century. There was, I'm in this department that still kind of defined religion in terms of different institutional traditions. And so you had the professor who taught Buddhism and the professor who taught Hinduism, and you had the Christianity professor. But when I was working on my own thesis, I was really interested in accounting for what wasn't necessarily quite toward the end of the spectrum that Robert Bellah termed Sheilaism, which is very much the kind of eclectic spirituality that you were talking about, but more how do people answer questions of whether or not history has meaning and what gives our life meaning, and what is good and bad. And I think the tendency to faith, as we all know, is inextricably bound up in our humanity. And it's been interesting to me in the last few years to see our country through different phases of disappointment, which I think point to things that we had put our faith in some ways. You know, maybe certain constructs of our country as a nation or particular leaders, and had really, whether or not we even fully acknowledged it or recognized it ourselves, we had put our faith in those things to provide some kind of salvation. And you see a lot of people even talking about that recently with Steve Jobs as well. There was a recent piece in the Wall Street Journal about him as a secular prophet.
Oh, yeah, when he died, I was stunned by, I think Steve Jobs is a very important figure, so please, if anyone has a gun and is a disciple of Steve Jobs, I just was stunned. It was as if a religious figure had died, at least in the Bay Area. But it's a good point. You all made very good points. Maybe, let me ask this question, which is maybe in this area less exciting than it might be, say, in Grand Rapids, Michigan, but keeping in mind the whole country. How important is it for someone who is religious, let's say, not simply spiritual, someone who's religious, meaning they actively declare themselves to be Buddhist or Christian or of a particular group, how important is it for them to question that? How important is it for them as a whole religious being to challenge their own belief system? Or is it, in fact, okay and a strength for someone maybe to just believe and not question? And just, this is what the church teaches me. I'm not going to challenge that. This is what... You don't get a lot of that, of course, in the Bay Area, but...
Okay.